You should check your mail right now because you may be one of the 22 million people receiving a letter that your health insurance premium is going up by a lot. And look, I know health insurance costs have been going up for years. So true. We have a real problem in this country when it comes to how much it costs to go to the doctor. And that was before Donald Trump and the Republicans passed a bill to rip away health care from 15 million people and drive up costs for millions more. Now, look, there's a lot I can say about the cuts that Trump and the Republicans made to Medicaid and to the Affordable Care Act, but I want to focus quickly on one piece of this, and that's something called the ACA premium tax credits. And before your eyes glaze over, lock in, because this is important and it could affect you or your family. If we don't act to stop these Republican cuts, 22 million people who get their health care through the health care exchanges, also known as the Affordable Care Act, will see their premiums more than double on average next year, more than double. And that's if you don't lose your health care altogether. So there are a couple of things going on here. First, if you're someone who's scrolled through healthcare.gov or your local exchange, in Massachusetts, we call it the Health Connector, and you've picked a plan, chances are you also got a tax credit to help lower your costs. Last year, these tax credits helped lower premiums by hundreds of dollars. For some people, that meant that, look, if you were scraping pennies together to make ends meet, you could use that money to help put food on the table for your family or finally get that leak on your roof fixed. For others, maybe someone with a chronic illness, they were able to afford a higher quality healthcare plan, like one with lower copays for the inhaler they need every month, or they could go to the health plan that let them keep seeing the doctor they've known for years, even though that doc is now out of network on the cheaper plans. Republicans have ended those tax credits that allowed Americans to afford that care, and that'll be effective at the end of this year. So here's what that means. Right now, you're a recent grad making $28,000 a year at your first job. You would only have to pay 1% of your annual income on healthcare coverage through the ACA. That's about $300. If Republicans don't come to the table to restore this program, that same recent grad will now have to pay over $1,500. And it doesn't stop there. In the middle of all this chaos going on right now, health insurance companies are also raising their premiums by a whopping 18% across the board. That's double what they increased last year. Why? Well, the reason rhymes with don't. A research group found that one reason health insurance companies are raising prices is because of Trump's chaotic on-again, off-again tariffs. How? Well, we report a lot of prescription drugs and drug ingredients from overseas, and insurance companies say uncertainty from tariffs is driving their costs up. So what does all of that mean for you? It means you're about to be forced to shell out more and more of your money to pay for your insurance. In Massachusetts, a couple in Worcester earning $85,000 a year would see an increase in their health insurance premiums from about $500 a month to more than $1,600 a month for the same plan. You just have to ask, does anybody have that kind of money lying around every month? For a lot of families, the answer to the question is no. And with these expected changes to the ACA, about 4 million people will lose their health plans altogether. And you know who drops their health insurance first? Young people, healthy people, people who actually keep the cost of insurance low by paying in without usually needing high-cost medical procedures. And when more healthy people drop their insurance, costs go up for everyone else, which is another reason that insurance companies are raising their rates. But make no mistake, even if you think you're healthy, dropping your coverage could be a disaster. I was just talking to someone the other day about what can happen, Lee. And Lee was telling me that when she was 29 years old, she was getting married, she's completely healthy. 2 years later, she was diagnosed with a rare terminal illness, and just one of her medications costs $130,000 every month. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. You don't know if you'll get hit by a car in a freak accident or lose control on a ski trip and end up in the hospital in a back brace. You don't know if you'll have the baby that runs up $1 million health bill before she's a month old. These programs are in place to make sure that everyone can afford coverage. No one falls through the cracks and ends up with a medical bill that throws them into bankruptcy. Only now, the Republicans are determined to cut their lifelines. And look, this is not the first time we've had this fight. Remember back in 2017, it was summer and the Republicans came after the Affordable Care Act so that they could take away health care for millions of people. The House Republicans passed the bill, and then they go over to the White House to meet with President Trump. Everyone's all excited, and they pass around the brewskis to celebrate. Because what's not to celebrate about taking away health care from millions of Americans? And then a few days later, the bill comes to the Senate. The Republicans have the majority, like they do now. Everybody says it's going to pass. But here's the deal. People made phone calls, people sent texts, people showed up in Washington. You know, my personal favorite were the littlest lobbyists. These were little babies with complex medical needs whose mamas pushed their strollers through the halls right here in Congress. Some of them were also pulling wagons loaded with this special breathing equipment and special feeding equipment that those babies needed to stay alive, equipment that those babies and their mamas and daddies counted on the government to help them pay for. Now, you may remember the Senate vote. We're all standing there, our hearts in our throats, waiting for the final vote, waiting for the Republicans to kill healthcare for millions of people. Everybody knew they were going to win. They just needed John McCain's vote, and it was done. And then John McCain goes down to the desk in the Senate. Nobody knew how he would vote. I couldn't even sit down. I was so nervous. McCain holds his thumb out and then gives the thumb down. And that vote saved healthcare for tens of millions of Americans. But understand this. It wasn't just John McCain who went into a room all by himself and decided access to healthcare was important. John McCain heard from people all over this country. He felt the weather that we created together. And that is exactly where we are today. Republicans shut down this government because they don't want to work with Democrats to lower healthcare costs. Democrats are going to keep fighting to save healthcare for millions of Americans because we believe it's the right thing to do. But the real power is with you. Stay in this fight because millions and millions of Americans are counting on you, counting on us to save healthcare. Let's do it.